Hey, it's Irreverent Aegis here, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how to get the Trifecta in Red Petal Bastion. That's to get the title of the Silver Rose. And in this video we're bringing back 2-tank strat, because we feel like this is the easiest to do with not 1 tank, but with 2. This first hard mode, as I'm sure you are already aware, has a goat mechanic, where people in your group get turned into goats. What's interesting is that with 2 tanks, you could actually have both tanks get turned into goats, if you really feel like it, because the person who has aggro cannot be turned into a goat. So, if I wanted to be goated, for example, I could just let our off-tank grab aggro, and then I could get turned into a goat. Anyway, we didn't actually do that. What's nice is that you can control who gets turned into a goat, and in what order. So, 3 people have to be turned into goats. You can't avoid that. But you can control the order. So what we like to do is we like to have one of our DPS, it's our melee DPS, we like to have him stand farther away from the boss. Because who gets goated depends on who's the furthest away from the boss. That allows him to be a melee DPS the rest of the time. For the second goat, we let our other DPS stand the furthest away from the boss. And then after that, we let our off-tank, who pretty much doesn't do anything anyway for this whole fight except provide some buffs and a little bit of off heals, we let him stand farthest away from the boss the rest of the fight. That allows our 2 DPS to focus on the execute, and conveniently, when you have one of your DPS get turned into a goat first, and then another one get turned into a goat second, it tends to avoid getting a double portal mechanic. If your DPS is good, it's probably based on percentages, you get 2 portals instead of 1 unless you control the beginning of the fight. But once all team members, with the exception of the main tank of course, have been turned into a goat at least 1 time, it's based on proximity to the boss. That allows our off-tank to always be the one turned into a goat later on in the fight, so as Bloodthirsty gets stronger and stronger, our DPS will never be turned into a goat, allowing this to go as quickly and as smoothly as possible. As is the case with most Trifecta runs, the most difficult component of it is the no-death. So for this fight, the most important advice I can give you is to stay out of the giant AoEs. Pretty straightforward there. When you're a goat, you tend to not be able to self-heal or anything like that, so just make sure you avoid, in goat form, any of the things that are falling down and dropping AoEs everywhere. When the portal comes up, and you really only should get 1 portal if you follow the strategy that I gave you with the goat rotation, the portal needs to go down first, and the ads that come out of it are a priority. They should be stacked on the portal. The priority targets that come out of the portals are the Watchers, as when they come up, they can put a stun on somebody, and when they do that, it needs to be bashed or that target will die. So just look out for that. You'll notice we got 2 extra portals at the end there. We shouldn't have. We made a couple of mistakes, and our DPS was a little slow. Normally you don't get those if you're on pace. This dungeon, like a lot of the other ones that came out around it, has optional side bosses that provide various buffs. We opted to only go for the second buff, as it's actually a time saver getting this buff, because of the amount of flame damage you do as a tank while you're blocking is non-negligible. It actually stacks up quite a bit and makes the boss fights a lot faster. A lot of groups also like to get the third buff because it enhances your damage dramatically for the final hard mode. The final hard mode takes quite a while to complete, and the faster you can do damage to the boss, the fewer mechanics you have to deal with. And there's a lot of mechanics going on, so that is a good option for groups who are able to spend the time to get that buff. Overall, it doesn't save you time, it doesn't net you any extra time rather, but it does make the final fight faster, which may be worth it for some people. The second hard mode boss in this dungeon is hands down, without a doubt, the most annoying boss in ESO. At 80%, a mini comes out, it's an archer, and at the same time the boss gets a bubble around himself. The bubble makes it so that you have to be inside the bubble to do damage to the boss. That'll be great and fine and everything, except for the fact that this boss is constantly moving around, and you just have to follow him around the entire time. So he'll put that big AoE on the ground, which you have to get out of, so you have to pull him out of the bubble, and then all the DPS need to follow him. Then he'll charge at you, and when he charges at you, he moves his bubble. And then randomly he'll jump across the map, and you have to, again, readjust yourself, get back inside the bubble, And then there's these exploding traps on the ground, which luckily with 2-tank strat is a lot easier to deal with, but you need to work your way around them so your DPS actually have a place to stand, again, keeping the boss moving and requiring that any ground AoEs you lay are going to be pretty much ineffective. Super annoying, worst designed boss in the history of the game, hands down. Not only do the DPS have to deal with this constant movement, but your tank, that is, if you weren't using 2 tanks like we do, would also have to pick up the 2 minis that come up throughout the fight. And that would be extra difficult, because then you'd have to have the tank be really good. And let's be honest, I'm a lazy tank, so I want to do as little as possible. So I let my other tank come in, grab the ads, deal with what they do, and the other tank is also going to walk through all of those traps for us, giving us plenty of room to maneuver. That way our DPS can get the job done very easily. So let's break down the roles in a little more detail for this fight. The main tank holds Elium Merrick, and the most important thing here is positioning and avoiding those kicks and permablocking. So you may have noticed that I don't bar swap a lot in this fight, and I don't really apply my back bar buffs in this fight. Because you can notice that every time I take damage, the ticks from my block increase. You actually see that as long as I hold that block button down and don't bar swap and don't roll dodge, I can actually reach up to 23,000 damage per second just by holding block. So that's my main role. Now, I do have to roll dodge to avoid that kick, because the kick also is going to stagger me and ruin the ability to stack up that damage. But my main role, again, I am going to position the boss, I am going to block. And anytime I want to reapply my buffs, I always wait for him to kick, or I have to wait for me to roll dodge for some reason. The off-tank. The role of the off-tank is to pick up the archer at 80%, and more importantly, the two-hander at 60%, and hold aggro the entire time, because that two-hander is pretty much going to come in and one-shot everybody. The off-tank also provides some off-healing and that blood altar. That way it keeps us topped off, and it's convenient because we are using a warden off-tank, so we get that extra health as well. The DPS just follow me around, stay in the bubble, and kill the boss. We just ignore those minis the entire time. I know you can kill them and get rid of the bubble up to a certain point, but we just go with stay in the bubble the whole time, kill the boss. And that's how we break it down.
Chosen. That did it. But I still feel more corruption beyond this room. Let's press on.
Don't forget why we are here, priest.
So we finally arrived, and unlike other runs when we were going for the Trifecta, we actually remembered to activate hard mode. Now, what you want to do as the main tank here is you want to make sure you have shielded assault or a gap closer on your bar. That makes getting the interrupts in this fight much easier. If you don't do that, you might put yourself in a dangerous position. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is you let the off tank do all of the work. But seriously, your job is pretty much to permablock, position the boss, and to make sure you get those interrupts. And that's about it. Every once in a while throughout the fight, the boss is going to teleport across the room. This can be gap closed if necessary, because if you wait too long, it will be an instant death for somebody. You need to gap close, then get the interrupt. Another mechanic the boss does that the tank needs to pay attention to is when he puts his sword into the ground. As the main tank, you should call out Kite to your party. That tells them to spread out and keep moving, as those spikes that come out of the ground will pretty much instantly kill anybody except for you. Just like in the second boss, it's very important that you dodge that kick attack. It's even more important here because he will follow up the kick with a double cleave from himself and his red shade. It doesn't automatically mean you're going to die if you get hit by the kick. However, you will take a lot of damage from the double cleave, and later on in the fight, there's a lot more going on with adds, AoEs, moving walls, etc. So it likely will mean that you will die if you get kicked later on. While the main tank is busy doing main tank things, the off tank should be grouping up any adds that come out. There are small adds throughout the fight that can be brought next to the boss, but more importantly, starting around 75%, you're going to get the Realm Shapers. And the Realm Shapers are a big deal, and they definitely should be grouped up and brought away from the main boss. The reason why is because they do an AoE heal that heals the main boss very rapidly and extends the duration of the fight significantly if the main boss gets those heals. So again, the off tank is going to group them up, pull them off away from the boss, and the DPS can go burn them down very quickly. Whenever possible, it's a good idea for the main tank to hold the boss by this exit door. That makes it more convenient for the DPS, because they have a lot more room to maneuver around the center of the room as the number of ground AoEs increases and gets more hectic throughout the fight. Now, this isn't always convenient for the main tank to do, as sometimes there are a lot of other mechanics going on, and pulling him over there would actually be more dangerous. However, when convenient, it's a good idea to reapply aggro, run to that spot, and if the boss is doing a mechanic, he will actually teleport right back over to you as soon as the mechanic is over. At 60%, another mechanic is added to the fight, and that mechanic, of course, is moving walls. However, unlike Fanglair and Depths of Malatar, they don't instantly kill you, they just knock you down. Conveniently, these walls always spawn in the same 4 spots of the room, and they always follow the same path every time. In addition, the walls do not extend all the way to the short side of the room, which means that if the main tank is holding the boss by that exit door and up against the wall, the main tank will never get hit by a wall going by. You can actually see that right here. Because the walls always follow the same path, it's a good idea for everybody in the group to have a few favorite spots to stand where they know they're going to be safe from every wall. You can use the tiles on the floor as kind of the markers for where to stand. With all the adds that come up and with all the ground AoEs that spawn throughout the fight, however, this isn't always practical for everyone to be able to stand in a safe spot. So what we also have is our off tank will call out every time a new wall spawns. That'll give our DPS a heads up as to what they need to do, either get to a safe spot, or it'll say, hey, it's about time to roll dodge, because you can actually roll dodge through these walls as well and not get hit by them. From here on out, the mechanics are pretty much going to repeat. Like I said, things get more and more hectic with ground AoEs as you progress in this fight, but for the most part, everyone has the same role, and it's not going to change from any time between now and 0%. So what I'm going to do is spend the rest of this time going over the gearing for 2-tank strat. Now these are just suggestions, and if you're doing 2-tank strat, just view it as having 2 support characters where both of them should have on the body heavy armor. As the main tank, I strongly recommend using Encrades as your monster set. That's because that second buff in the dungeon gives you pretty much unlimited flame damage when you block, and that flame damage is boosted by Encrades. Not only that, but Encrades is procced when you block and hit him with flame damage, which is really nice. The main tank is going to do a non-negligible amount of damage to this boss, as the main tank is pretty much on the boss blocking the entire fight. So Encrades is great. The other thing I like the main tank to have is Eelnokrans. And the reason why your lockdown is nice is because, well, you're pretty much constantly applying aggro to the main boss, so it's better on the main tank than on the off tank. The next set that I wear on the main tank is War Machine. Now, I actually did a horrible job in this fight of actually using my ultimate ever. I have no idea why, I just never dropped it. I dropped it maybe once and held it the rest of the time. I should have been applying it strategically, but I guess I just was not paying attention ever. But War Machine's nice because you can control when you want that extra burst from the War Machine buff when everyone's done killing ads and when that shield goes away. So War Machine was a good option for us as well if I actually used it properly. Since both of those sets are proc sets, it is easy to backbar War Machine, which allows you to run a mythic item such as Bloodlord's Embrace, my recommended mythic item for pretty much most content, as it gives you that near unlimited Magicka sustain. For the off tank, there are 3 good options for weapons and jewelry: Oldarima, Spell Power Cure, and Powerful Assault. It just depends how comfortable your off tank is with applying those buffs. That will determine which set is going to be best for the fight. The main body pieces that we liked our off tank to have was Sack Seals. Again, Sack Seals is a heavy set, so it was great on the body for that off tank, and it allowed us to have really good uptime on Major Force. Since the off tank also provides support heals throughout the dungeon, a good monster set to wear is Symphony of Blades. The Realm Shapers that come out at 20% should be grabbed by the off tank and pulled away from the boss. The DPS should not worry about killing this last round of Realm Shapers because they will no longer come out at percentages at this phase. They'll just come out again after you kill them. So again, there's no point in actually focusing them down. You'll notice that the boss went from 16% way back up to 23%. That's because he got healed by the Realm Shaper, as our off tank was not able to pull it away as quickly as we would have preferred. Now, he finally gets them pulled away, and of course, the boss decided to teleport right next to them. So at my first opportunity, I am going to re-aggro the boss and take him to that spot by the exit door. That way he'll be far away from those Realm Shapers. This opportunity is going to arise when he does that last sword in the ground kite mechanic right here. So I call out kite, reapply aggro, and book it over to that exit door, knowing that he's going to teleport directly to me as soon as it ends. And there he is teleporting right to me. This is going to allow our DPS to burn him down that last 10%. And what do you know, I remembered to drop my ultimate one last time. Realizing he's about to suffer defeat, he tries to sneak away one last time, but he dies mid-teleport. Goodbye, Prior Theric Sarazen. And that's how you do 2-tank strat for the Trifecta achievement in Red Petal Bastion. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button, and if you have not subscribed to my channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment as well, and I will try to answer it. Other than that, enjoy your Red Petal Bastion Trifecta progression. For the record, this was by far my least favorite dungeon to go for the Trifecta in. Worst prog ever, I hated every boss. Hopefully you don't have that same experience.